I don't keep count, but it looks like it's heating up a little bit. We had the GM meetings last week and had some conversations prior to going there, and then got together with some people there, and some more conversations after the meeting, during the meetings, and then phone calls to follow up after. But it seems like now going into this week, there's going to be a little bit more action, and I'm sure it'll heat up before the days.
If you don't go to the podium and take the 14th, the 19th, and the 27th pick, will you be surprised, or, and second question, will you be disappointed?
Actually, I'd say we'd have to be very excited not to go there, because it would have to be a very good deal for our organization to trade one of those picks. It would have to be something that makes a lot of sense, because it's a good draft. It's a deep draft, like everybody's talked about. So if we're going to trade away our first-round pick, it's going to have to be a player that makes a lot of sense for us now and going into the future.
If you had the #1 overall, who would you take?
Those questions I never answer. I don't think it's ethical for me to make selections that I can't make. But I have my firm opinion. Maybe I'll tell you later on over a beer or something.
Jarmo, how much is the Bobrovsky situation, not having him sign, how much is it kind of looming over this week and heading into the draft? And is that maybe the linchpin for a lot of other things going into this weekend?
Well, yeah, obviously, it's a big piece of the puzzle, and he's a great player and great goaltender, and we want to have him back, and we're working hard to get him back. We're optimistic that we're going to have him back and sign into a contract, and that's work in progress. We've had some good conversations with his agent, and we're optimistic, like I said, but now we have to focus on the draft too, and that's very important for our franchise, so we can't take any focus away from that. But I think that we can manage with the 2 contracts that we have left to sign, which is Bobrovsky and Anisimov. We're pretty close with Anisimov. I'm again optimistic there that we'll get a deal done here sooner rather than later. And with Bobrovsky, like I said, we're working at it, and we're hoping that it'll get done.
Jarmo, you learned a lot about the guys in the room, I think, during the last 2 months of the season. Is there anybody that you view as untouchable? Is there anybody that you won't even listen to any offer whatsoever if that name pops up?
I always say that Wayne Gretzky got traded, so I don't know who should be untouchable that way. I think we have a good group of guys, good chemistry in the room. Team had some success with this chemistry and this lineup that we had here. So I think that's something that you don't want to really touch or tinker, or don't fix it if it's not broken type of thing. So I think we have to respect the chemistry that we had in the room, and the how the guys liked working with each other, and the camaraderie that they developed there. So I think that's something that we take very seriously, and whatever we have to consider, that's something that we're going to always think about. But again, Wayne Gretzky got traded, so I don't know if you want to declare anybody untouchable.
Jarmo, just I know things could obviously change in the first round with your availability there, but just generally speaking, from the organizational standpoint, what are the position groups? What are the biggest needs that you think you have to address going into the weekend?
Well, our team, I think we need a little bit more scoring, but I always say this, that when you go to the draft and you think that, okay, well, we're going to address our needs, and those guys will be ready to make an impact in the NHL, it might take 3 to 6 years before they're ready to do that. And that doesn't even take anything away from the player. He might still become a star in the NHL, but just not come to that level until he's 24 years old. And then he might still play 16 years in the league and have a great career and be a star. So you just got to let the players develop in the pace that they're in, with their physical elements and the psychological elements. So I don't think that you can really go into the draft and talk about your needs now. I think it's about building a balanced depth chart for your organization, where you have depth in goaltending, depth in size, strength defensemen, depth in skilled defensemen. Same thing with the forwards. You have size, strength forwards, role players, you have skill players, speed, and then we have a column that we call special, where you have tough guys and some small guys that are not your prototypical NHL players that bring something special to your team. So I think that when you have a balanced depth chart, and you know that even if you lose players into free agency or in a trade, that you can always count on those guys maturing within the next couple of years, then you can look at your depth chart and say, we've done a pretty good job. We have players coming, even if we can make a trade there and still think that, okay, in the next little while, we're going to have our own guys being ready to play and contribute. So that's what we're aiming at.
Jarmo, are you, in terms of Bobrovsky again, are you negotiating years and money for the Columbus Blue Jackets in the NHL? Are you negotiating against Mother Russia? I mean, is that what you're up against? Because we hear they're willing to do about anything to get this guy back.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the real process with the KHL. I've been in the situation before where I was working in Finland. There was always, if you heard KHL, it's like, okay, well, thanks for coming and see you later, because it was just a different ball game with their salary structure. I think NHL is a lot closer to it, but some of the things that you hear from them, it's just, we can't compete with that. We have our own structure here with this league, with our own team, and that's something we have to respect, and that's what our work is based on, the comparables that we have within the NHL and the salaries and contracts that have been agreed to in this league. So whatever it is, and I respect KHL and the way they do business, that's their business, but we have to do what's best for our franchise and what's best for our league, and respect that process.
Was that what you worry about, that he wants to go home?
Well, nobody wants to lose the Vezina winner goalie. That's, I mean, it'd be foolish to say that. Well, obviously we want him back, but I've said it before that we need players that want to play for the Columbus Blue Jackets. That's our main focus, and that's all we can worry about. And I'm very optimistic and about Sergei Bobrovsky wanting to play for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He won the Vezina Trophy last year, had success in the NHL, was a big part of our success. I'm hoping that he wants to continue on that path and grow with our team.
Jarmo, with the way the team finished the season and the draft picks, the excitement is very high for this draft. How much pressure does that put on you and your team to do the right thing for this organization? Because a lot of people have been talking, a lot of fans have been talking about, you know, we got three first-round draft picks. The way the team finished, we almost made the playoffs. How much pressure does that put on you to do the right thing?
I think it's exciting. I think it's the great opportunity for our franchise. It's a great opportunity for our scouts to make a big difference for us. But again, I'm cautious about thinking that with these first three or three first-round picks that we're going to bring in a player that's going to help us right away and make an impact on our team right away. That very rarely happens unless you're in the top of the draft and you know, top 5 maybe this year. Those guys can come in and maybe play next year. And there's going to be somebody from the later picks that's going to surprise people and come in and make the team and be more mature than you probably thought he was. But I think you have to let the players show where they are in that process before jumping into that conclusion, or even the optimistic hope that they're going to come in and make an impact. So we're going to, if we pick 3 players, we're going to let them come to training camp. We're going to evaluate where they're at, and then we're going to put them in the situation where they belong, where they can succeed, rather than rushing them into our lineup and trying to make them into NHL players if they're not ready for it.
And the pressure on you and your team, do you feel that pressure?
Again, I think it's a great opportunity. I don't think of it as pressure. I think it's an opportunity for us to get better.
Jarmo, what did you learn watching the playoffs this year in terms of how the game may be changing stylistically, if it is, and how far away your team is from competing at that level?
I thought we played some pretty good games against Chicago Blackhawks this year. Obviously, it wasn't the playoffs, and it heats up a little bit when you go into the playoffs, and the tempo and the intensity goes up a notch. But we played some great games against Chicago Blackhawks this year. I think that our team can be proud of those games. It's physical, it's intense, it's fast, high-tempo game. And those are the ingredients that we talk about every day. And it's just, we did pretty well in the regular season. It wasn't good enough to make it into the playoffs. We got to be better. And then if and when we make it, we got to be a notch better yet to be able to compete in the playoffs. So that's what we're aiming at. And I think that every time you watch a game, an intense game like last night, or a playoff game, I was at the fifth game in Chicago. And it's a great game. It's fast and furious. It's entertaining and it's physical. So we got to get players that can play on that level. And as a team, we got to be disciplined and the special teams and all those ingredients. I think that we have a lot of those things. We have to get better, and we're going to get better.
Jarmo, you talked about building depth. Where do you think this organization stands in terms of its depth?
I think we showed some excellent depth last year with our defense, for example. We had a lot of guys come in from Springfield and played really well. Dalton Prout came in and stayed. He earned his spot, and it was impossible to even consider him going back in the middle of last year the way he played. He was a contributor and an impact player when he came up here. So I think that's a great testament to the depth of our defense. I think that we can always get better with your depth. I don't think you can ever say, oh, we got too much depth. So you can always keep working at it and get better. I think the scoring part, again, is something that we're going to emphasize, that we need scorers, because that's what decides the games. You play good defense, you have good goaltending. Well, we have pretty good quality in those areas. Now we want to get a little bit more scoring, that we don't always have to win games 2-1.
One of the things that we heard prior to your arrival here is that the Blue Jackets were working really hard to take the lockout to their advantage and use that time to scout. Did you find that your staff had maybe more information than you otherwise would have had because of the untraditional way the season started or didn't start?
I don't know. I wasn't part of that conversation, obviously, but amateur scouts will do the job no matter if there's a lockout or not. It doesn't affect their job description. The amateur games are still going on, and they scout as usual. Pro scouting side's different because there's no NHL, so they have more time to scout the American League and maybe the college game or something like that to fill in their schedule when there's no NHL games. So I think that the pro scouting staff got a little bit different look on what they normally would have this year, and I think that's helpful. Obviously, you know the prospects coming from the American League level better. You might get some good looks on the college free agents and so forth, but the amateur process is the same. And we have had our meetings. We'll have a few more in New York and a couple players more to interview and get to know a little bit better. But I think that we're well prepared already. I don't think there's going to be a lot of changes made based on or on the list that we built in the final amateur meetings after the combine. So I think we're prepared, we're ready, and our scouting staff's done a good job, and they're prepared. So we're excited about this week.
You mentioned your need for scoring. Do you think it's more likely you'll find that scoring this weekend through the draft and trades, or next weekend come free agency?
I think it's the trades, and especially the draft, is more in our control, where we can aim at drafting the players that we like, that can bring us that scoring in the future. Trade, you always need two to tango. Free agency, you're going to have potentially 29 other teams interested in the same players. So no matter how hard you might like or want the player, and you got a real good package and you offer the great contract and all the other advantages that you might think that you have, the player still might like the team next to you better. And there's, you can sell all you want. He might have his mind made up that that's where he wants to go. So I think that the draft's a real good opportunity for us both in trying to trade and or make picks.
Kind of following up on that, in your evaluations of the talent in this draft, do you think is more beneficial for this franchise to have the quantity of those 3 first-round picks, or would it be more beneficial to get the quality and move up?
It's not easy to move up, I can tell you that. I talked with a couple of you, and just from my past experience, when the draft was here in 2007, we had 3 first-round picks with St. Louis. We tried like every possible scenario to try to move up from 9 to 1, from 9 to 2, 9 to 3, and so forth. And we couldn't even move from 9 to 7, and 7 was Columbus's pick at the time. So we tried a lot of different things to try to move up. And when other teams know there's good players and they do their homework, it's not easy to move up.
Jarmo, you mentioned you've done this before. You've been involved in these drafts, but not as a general manager. How has your approach changed, or have you changed your approach at all being in a different role this time?
One thing I learned from my drafts, I was fortunate enough to have general managers that had experience in the scouting field, and they understood how the draft worked, obviously. And I think as a general manager, I was fortunate that those guys always provided the best possible opportunity for the scouting staff with the moves they made. So that's the philosophy that I'm going to have going into this weekend, where we have 3 first-round picks, and we're going to do everything we can to provide our scouting staff the best possible opportunity, whether it's keeping those picks, moving up, or possibly even moving back and get some more picks and opportunities to pick players. And the probabilities are not that high, but if you have 10 picks, the probability at the end of the day doesn't really matter. It's the quantity of the players that you get that might contribute in the NHL. So if you have 15 darts to throw at the, you count the 30% out of that, and it's a lot, or 50% out of that, or whatever your percentage might be. It's a lot more quantity than taking the same 30% out of 8 picks or 7 picks.
At this point, does it look like you'll have any opportunity to get into the top 4 or 5? Have you ruled that out?
We're not going to rule that out until 6th pick comes along and we're out of it. So we're going to keep trying, but like I said, it's not going to be easy. But we'll try our best in different scenarios. But obviously, you don't want to. We've made our evaluation of what the value of that pick will be, and then we'll make our offers accordingly. And then we're not going to go crazy and try to get there just for the sake of getting there. If the price gets too steep, we're going to just stay where we are.
There's been talk that with the salary cap going down for the first time, teams may need to be moving players that they otherwise might not want to move in order to get under the salary cap. From your conversations, have you seen, is that coming into form now? Are teams beginning to look at the process of moving established players to get under the salary cap?
Yeah, we've had conversations with a few teams about that, and I think that's something that we're going to look at very, very long and hard with our first-round picks. If there's a player that makes sense for us, not only in the short term but in the long term, to trade for one of our first-round picks, that's definitely something that we'll consider. And we've had some talks about that type of situations, but nothing conclusive yet, so we'll keep working at it.
Bobrovsky becomes an RFA on July 5th. The KHL seems to be operating from the perspective of, and July 1st they can make an offer. Is July 1st any sort of a deadline for you in terms of them being able to make an offer?
Again, we can't compete with the KHL. That's it's a different league, and they have different budgets and different rules there, and we're going to operate under the NHL structure and contracts that have been signed in this league, and the comparables that we're going to get from other goalie contracts in the NHL.
Just wondering what the rest of your week is like leading up to Sunday. I mean, you've talked about the evaluations being done. Are you pretty much set and it's waiting for Sunday? Obviously, understanding you're probably going to get a lot of phone calls and stuff, but from an organizational standpoint, do you feel, hey, we're ready to go? What's going on before the draft Sunday?
Well, I'm going to travel to New York tomorrow, and we're going to meet with our amateur staff on Thursday, and then we're going to have some interviews, meet with a few players again. Some of them we already met at the Combine. But then we're going to get together for meetings again to see if we gathered some more information from the interviews, the additional interviews, and maybe tweak the list a little bit. You know, Paul Castron and Tyler Wright are going to make the final calls on our list, obviously, and then put the books together and make the final list the night before the draft and be ready to go. I don't believe in making huge changes at this point. You worked on the list all year. You watched all those games. We shouldn't be making a lot of changes at the end of June. Otherwise, I don't know why you keep going to 200 games and watching some of those players 20, 30 times and putting them into the order if you're going to make those changes now. But at the same time, you're going to find some additional information, and you're going to have to take that into consideration. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of conversations and a lot of different scenarios, and every year there seems to be something that comes up in the last second, and I remember we had I think we had 21st pick in Ottawa when we were going into the draft, and 7 a.m. the day of the draft, we all of a sudden had second overall pick and picked Jason Spezza and got Chara in that same trade. So a lot of things can happen in the just before the draft.
Jarmo, do you have any updates on potential progress with any of your other, I know we've talked about Bob, but restricted or unrestricted free agents, specifically Artie, but I know you've got more than him to think about.
We've done all our all the qualifying offers and all that. Those are going out, and we just want to respect the process so that we communicate with the players before we announce anything, and that's going on right now, and we'll let you know as soon as we can. But like I said, I'm optimistic that Artem Anisimov will get done here shortly, and we're working on Bob.
Jarmo, because of the picks you have, how important is it to get it right? How impactful could this draft be for this franchise?
It's very important, obviously. Like I said, it's a great opportunity, so don't waste an opportunity when it's there. You don't very often get 3 first-round picks, and everybody says it's a good draft, so it's an opportunity to get 3 very good players in the positions that we're in right now. Positions could change. We might end up with 2 firsts and 3 seconds. You never know. I mean, that's the way this works, and I've moved back several times before in the draft where you feel that, okay, we're sitting at 27 and we think that we're still going to get a player in the 30s, and there's a trade available that would give us a 38th and 46th or something, and then I think it's worth a gamble, but then it's going to be nerve-wracking to wait and see if he's still there. But this year at least you don't have to divide it in 2 days where you go to the second day and have to wait overnight, because you do the whole draft in 1 day from the afternoon to into the night. It'd be interesting to see when we get done on Sunday. I think it'll be Monday before we get done, but we'll see.